Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us with another conversation. Today's special guest is none other than Evangelia.
Hello.
So before we begin, do you want to just give us a little introduction about yourself? What do you do? What are you up to?
Sure. Okay, so as Alicia mentioned, my name is Evangelia. What I do lifestyle, beauty, and faith content, more so on the faith side. My whole passion is making sure that people are biblically literate, or if you're curious about Christianity or you're new to Christianity, that it's not intimidating and you have some you know, steps to, I guess, figure things out. Yeah. So that's
Yeah,
kind of what I do.
awesome. And for those watching, we'll have everything, her social media platforms tagged underneath so you guys can go and check that out. So my first question is, what is mental health to you? What does that mean to you?
Mental health, such a buzzword. I just feel like
I know,
it's
I know.
right. It's literally just the health of your mental state, like where you are in terms emotionally, if you're a Christian, spiritually, I include that. Oops, sorry, that was my alarm. I include that into like mental health, just literally being mentally healthy, well-rounded, the balance, which honestly is a myth. So more so the wellness of it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I like how you pointed out that it's, a myth kinda, because I think some people really think you have to be, like, one or the other
Yeah.
rather than, like you said, just balancing that and stuff, so I really like, that you said that because that's really big. So what has your own journey been with mental health, and how what did your relationship look like with God throughout that journey, or even, like, a section of your journey?
Yeah, so honestly, my whole journey with mental health, it was an interesting one, or has been an interesting one, because I am Ghanaian, which means that, and I also went to high school in Ghana, which means that for us over there, mental health is not something that's considered, it's not something that's taught about, it's not something that's even, you know, it's not considered in almost anything. And so you could literally be suffering from depression, but they're just going to tell you that you're overreacting or you're doing this on purpose. And so I've never really considered mental health in anything that I did, or it being something that I had to think about, or just and none of that was even at the forefront of my mind until I came back to America for college. So I was in Rutgers, and I remember, I think it was my spring semester of my freshman year, all of a sudden, I just had no energy to do anything. I was not going to classes. I was not eating. I didn't care if I had an exam that day. I was just going to skip it because I just had no motivation, no energy, no drive to leave my bed. And I had no idea what was going on with me. And I remember one of my friends saying, "You might be depressed." And it kind of just hit me like a truck. And I was like, "Depressed? Me?"
Mhm.
Like I was that
Yeah.
those depressed and Evangelia, it never went hand in hand, or I never thought of the 2 together, and so when she said it, I started looking it up, and then I talked to someone, luckily I had some, people in my life, and one of them was a mental health professional, and so I kinda told her what I was going through, how I'd been feeling, and she was like, Yeah, it sounds like depression." And so it took me a while, honestly. It took me way longer than I should have to kind of really come to terms with that fact and seek help. But once she told me, um, I did nothing with it. I kind of just like stuffed it under the rug, and I was like, it doesn't matter. It'll go away, until it kept coming back. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh, this is really real. Like, it's not something that I can just ignore or avoid and think that it'll get handled. And so it took until my junior year of college, for me to seek out professional help. And I looked for a Christian counselor, because my faith, is very important to me, got at the forefront of everything. And so I saw out a Christian counselor and I found one. And that's when I realized, like, oh, it was never going to get better with me just trying to stuff it under the rug. It was never going to get better with me acting like it doesn't exist. It was never going to get better with me avoiding it. And so as I was going to counseling and I was talking through things, I was seeing, or like things were coming up that I completely forgot about, because trauma suppresses some
Yeah.
memories. And so there were things coming up that I completely forgot about, that happened, or just things that I didn't know I felt these way about things. And so things had already passed, or there were past situations, or even relationships I had with people. I thought our relationships were great. I was like, "No, I love them to life. We're great." But in counseling, I'm upset at this person for
Mhm.
things that, they've done or things that have transpired, however, whatever the case may be. But all that to say, getting professional help is really where I started to come to terms with the fact that, okay, I'm a Christian and I was depressed or I'm
Yeah.
with depression. And I really started to get help. And for me, it was kind of like a thing where, because you hear pray it away, or like you just need to pray harder, or you don't have enough faith, or if you were really free, then you wouldn't have depression.
Right.
And that also wasn't the case because I was praying and I was living out my life, pleasing and acceptable to Christ, as Romans 12 says. But
Mhm.
I still also had depression and was wrestling with depression.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think even just a lot of people in the Bible we see that were very strong in their faith, but
Yeah.
there's periods and even long periods of time where they dealt with mental health issues and
Yeah.
even some of them borderline like mental illness.
Yep.
So I think it's really awesome that you just shared that, and thank you, because a lot of Christians think that like they're outside of mental health, but mental health, like you said earlier, is just the
Yeah.
mental well-being. That's
Yeah.
something that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. This isn't
Yeah.
something like it's just as important as physical health. This isn't something
Exactly.
that you could, like you said, put under the rug and stuff like that. It's something that you're with every day, all day. Like, how couldn't you not
Exactly.
care about your mental well-being? So thank you so much for sharing that. So you do a lot on social media. You are on literally like every platform of social media, which is great. And social media it's such a good and bad thing. There's so many good things that you can get out
Yeah.
of it, and my headphone is falling out of my ear. Um, but there's so many good that you can get out of it. You sharing the word, and people using their platforms for good, whether it is in ministry or stuff outside of that. It's a good resource in a way, but it's also a good source of just a lot of other people. You see a lot of other people's lives. You see a lot of other things that they're going through, stuff that they share, plus
Yep.
what you're going through, and then comparison comes in and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So, how do you deal with doing a lot on social media? Because you really do, and it's really awesome to see everything that, like, I remember there was one Q&A you did on your story where people were sending in questions, and this Q&A, a lot of people were asking about you and Elijah.
Yes.
For those who don't know, Elijah is her husband.
Yeah.
So, people were asking a lot of questions and how honest you were about your guys' journey, and then like your own behavior during the beginning of you guys, and then his behavior and stuff like that. You don't see that a lot. You don't see
Yeah.
people be honest about everything that you're honest about, especially something like marriage. People want to be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
like we were great all the time and our relationship was
Right.
awesome." And like that's a load of crap and that's okay. But it's so awesome that you're just so honest about everything. And I know that specific, I was really blessed by that, and I was so surprised too, cuz as women, I feel like Christian women also don't like to admit their wrongs. We're so used to being like, "Oh yeah, guys did all this and, they came back from that." And women are like scared to say like, "Oh, well, I kind of did the same thing, or I did something in that realm."
Yeah.
So how do you sorry, I just had to really say that because I really
No,
was so blessed by that. And
that's good.
I really, everybody that's watching it really needs to check it out because your honesty is just something really needed in, just the world in general. But so how do you balance, giving so much of yourself on social media, but also preserving some of yourself as well?
Honestly, it takes planning and boundaries. So
Hmm.
I will plan out. So I know what I want my social media to say. As honest and genuine as I am, I create these boundaries where I'm like, okay, on social media, I will share a morning routine. I will do a Q&A. I will share parts of my day to day, but it's very rarely that I will share with the world something that's reserved for my community, right?
Hmm.
So I have people who are praying for me, praying with me, fighting for me, fighting with me. And
Hmm.
so if I'm really, really going through something, I may share it on social media like, guys, me and the Lord have been talking about this. What are your thoughts? Or I'll see like a reel or something or TikTok that relates to what I've been learning. And I'll post and I'll be like, y'all, this is me right now. But
Hmm.
behind the scenes, I'm talking to my mentors or I'm talking to my leaders and I'm like, this is what I'm wrestling with, or this is where I disagree with this. Like, help me here. And
Hmm.
there are times where I'll post on social media something that I've been talking with the Lord about or in my community for like 6 months. It's just now I'm actually willing to either share the lesson or invite other people's thoughts, because the thing about social media, as great as it is, there are so many thoughts that can come at you that can also just kind of bog you down and have you just confused, or like the Mr. Krabs meme where it's like, you know,
Yeah. Everything's, like,
right.
vibrating around them,
It's like,
yeah.
I don't know where to look. I don't know what to do. It's too many opinions. It's too many voices in my ear. And so that's the thing with social media. So boundaries, I've learned, is like one of the most important things. There are days where I'll say, I'm not going to record today. I'm not going to film today. Even with vlogging, sometimes I'll say, okay, I'm going to be intentional about just enjoying where I am. So I don't necessarily feel weighed down by social media or weighed down by the pressure of needing to post. There are times where I will, like I said, I will map out my content. Like, okay, I'm going to post this, I'm going to post this, I'm going to post this. It also helps just keep me within, it helps me to color in the lines so that I'm
Mhm.
not oversharing on social media. Because oversharing on social media is like one of my biggest fears. Don't I don't want to be an oversharer. People are like, "Ooh, she should have kept that in the drafts." Like, I don't want to be me. So
That's
I
so
also have a
funny.
checker. Like,
Yeah.
for my post, my main post, I will send it to my best friend and send it to Elijah, my husband, and be like, "Review this for me. Is this like,
Mm,
can I post this? Is this good to post?" Because I also believe in accountability, especially when you have a platform. You don't want to just,
yeah.
say things all willy-nilly, because also on the whole mental health side of this is these trolls will come at you hard and heavy.
Mhm, mhm.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
no, you say one wrong thing and it's done up. And you could have the purest intention too. That's what's bad about social media. I feel like even when you are like as honest as you are, sometimes
yeah,
things are still misconstrued because they're not really understanding that full context. So it is good, like you said, to marinate with some stuff. And I've learned that a lot within the last few years is boundaries. And I was never the one that like would post my like entire life on
yeah,
social media and stuff, but there is a filter in which you have to use. And you can't,
yeah.
even though it's your page, because I used to be like, this is my page. I can post what I
Right.
want, which in theory, yeah, that
It
sounds
is.
great. But like this is a public platform. People are
Yeah,
watching you. And even if you had like your page private and it's just really loved ones, they could still take something wrong. They could still not understand what's going on and stuff like that. So yeah, no, that's really needed a filter and boundaries with social
yeah,
media and people, you know, being somewhat okay with giving out pieces of themselves that they really shouldn't, and that there are things that are supposed to be special. And like you said, kind of mapping out things, and especially with the field that you're in and just sharing God and God's word and
yeah,
anything related to that, it's hard sometimes to decipher whether something is for others or for yourself. You
exactly.
know, like the other day I spoke on a Sunday and I had this whole message ready and all that stuff. And at the time, all I felt was God say, "This is not the message that I want you to say. This is
I
not what I'm doing with you, whatever, whatever. I want you to say this." And I was like, okay. But in my head, I'm also like, why did I get that from you then? But so come a week later, something came full circle with that, and he was just saying, "I was telling you that. I wasn't telling the
wow.
universe that. I was telling you that." So I'm so glad that and I thought it was a good message, but I'm glad that that's not what I spoke, because a week later it was confirmed like he was talking
That
directly
was
to
for
me. It
you.
wasn't for the youth. So I would have been speaking out something that didn't come from him.
Yeah, essentially projecting, and I feel that so hard because there are so many times where I will like, I'll hear the Lord say something, and I'll grab
Mhm.
my phone, and I'll be like, "Oh, I'm gonna post this," like,
Right.
either making a graphic or going ready to eat or ready to, like, just film and say it, put on my story, and I just hear Holy Spirit like, "Mm-mm, mm-mm," and I'm just like,
Yeah.
"Dang," and so then I end up that's how I kinda realized, like, "Oh, you want me to, like, I have to sit with that? That's for me? Like, are you subbing me?
Mhm.
This isn't for the people,"
Right. That's so funny. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely a balance. And again, with you doing so much, I'm sure it's hard sometimes to like are there times that you ever just shut it out completely? Like has there been times that you have needed to take a break? I know I've have taken several month breaks from social media.
Honestly, okay, when I first started, um, 'Cause I was more so a month to month poster, like, you'll get
Mhm.
one picture of me this month, maybe next month you'll get another picture of me, probably it's gonna be like 2 to 3 months. That's how I used to post until, one day the Lord was telling me, "I want people to know me from your social media." He was like, when they
Mhm.
come to your page, I want them to know the gospel, I don't want them to feel intimidated, and I want them to feel like they can do this Christian walk." And so I started posting from that. And once I started gaining traction, it kind of overwhelmed me a little bit. And I remember one of my friends saying it was around like either when I had hit 10K or close to 10K, one of my friends was just like, "No, you need to keep going, keep posting. Like, this isn't the time to stop." But I clearly felt the Lord telling me, like, hop off for a bit. And so I
Mhm.
was off it for like, I think like a month or 2 months. And people were like, "Oh, that was the worst time for you to get off social media. You're going to lose your engagement. People aren't going to follow you anymore."
Wow.
And at first, it concerned me a little bit, and Holy Spirit really had to check me. It was like, "That's never the reason why you started this. That
Mm.
was never my direction. That was never the directive. It wasn't why you were meant to do this." And
Mhm.
so, what I do with my social media is more so I will always go back to Holy Spirit and reassess my why. If I ever feel like I'm coloring outside the lines or I'm about to, I'll just go back and be like, "Okay, why did you start this? Why did you go from your every other month posting to posting more consistently? What
Mhm.
was the reason?" And so I don't really take too many. I may take posting breaks, but not necessarily social media breaks. So
Yeah, okay.
I'll post like maybe once a week, or I'll go a month without posting, but I'll still be posting on my story. I just won't be posting anything on my page. I actually did it recently where I was just doing one post a month,
Mhm.
just because I it was more so like a seeking season for me, where I just felt like the Lord was really dealing with me personally, me individually, and so it wasn't a time for me to be on social media trying to force it for the people, you know? It was really just
Yeah.
me and the Lord moment, so it depends.
That's awesome, and I love how you mentioned the why behind it, because it's very easy, especially when the Lord gives us a platform, to forget the why, and
Yeah,
to remember that you're not there for anything else but to bring him glory. You're not there for anything
exactly,
else but to spread his word. So I think that's
exactly.
so great. And even just in general, even again, if it's not ministry and you're posting, and let's say like anybody that's watching, if they're, interested in doing stuff with social media and stuff, but remembering the why behind it, that there's a passion there, that there's a love there for what you're wanting to share with the world, and that you have to go back to that, and that you can't really care about engagement and stuff. And I
Right,
think since, you're back, like I see everybody loving on your photos, and you are really, and videos and reels and everything that you do, that like you are very relatable. And I think it's so refreshing to see somebody again who's just so honest with themselves too, right? Like you love makeup, you love fashion, you love
yeah,
that type of stuff. And people think that you have to throw away stuff like that when you have a
yeah,
relationship with God. Like maybe the fashion's gonna look a little different,
right,
but you could still be very fashionable without showing off without like being half naked basically. And
absolutely,
and no shade to anybody. Listen, we all have our own journeys, but people think you have to throw away stuff like that for him, when if that's who you are, that's who he loves, and
exactly,
he sees
yeah,
that, and he's using that for a purpose. Like, okay, she likes this. This is her interest. This is what she loves. So let me see how I could bring glory through that.
yeah.
So that's great. Another question that I had is, so what are other things that you do besides, obviously bring it to God? What do you do to maintain your mental health?
Okay, okay. So, there are a couple of things.
Mhm.
Therapy every other week, a absolute necessity for me.
Yep.
Um, my friends, I so my friends and I, we kind of rank our friendships or by I call you if I'm having a mental breakdown.
Mhm.
And so my friends are there for me. Like if I need to vent, if I need to process, they are there. I can give you 3 to 4 solid ones who will just listen to me, give me sound counsel, wise counsel, either let me cry, let me be angry, and they know not to like she gonna get over it in a few seconds. Just let her, just let her get it out.
Yeah, just like, yep.
And I need that. Because I am a very expressive person, and I can't be expressive on social media. I can't always be expressive with my husband because sometimes it's about my husband.
Right.
I need to be expressive with somebody else. And I love that I have those friends that I can just be like, I need to be angry for a hot minute. and then they'll let me and they'll know not to take almost anything I'm saying seriously, and then once I'm calmed down, they're like, "Okay, now let's actually talk." So,
Mhm.
that's the thing, self-care days, I love self-care days. Getting my hair done, getting my nails done, getting my lashes done, getting a pedicure.
Yeah.
Self-care days for me are therapeutic. That is my those are my mental health days. Okay, like,
Mhm.
that's my day off, DND, do not disturb, leave me alone. I'm like,
No, that's what it's good though.
that is my woosah day. And then also hanging out with friends and doing stuff. I love to be around my friends and go
Mhm.
out to eat, go skating, things like that. Those are fun for me. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, and a thing I wanted to point out because a lot of kids don't, and just youth don't realize this, and I think even as adults, sometimes depending on the person, it's very hard to separate yourself from that person. But you said solid and wise counsel. People and I've seen it a lot in teenagers. I used to do it as a teen that you go to people who are basically as broken as you and you expect them to guide you in a way that is helpful with you. And I know I've had friendships like that. And I've been the friend that like they're coming to
Yeah,
me and we're dealing with the same thing. And I'm like, dude, I don't freaking know. I'm actually worse than you are, to be honest. And if anything, I'm gonna like encourage the worst case scenario.
right.
So that yeah, I really like that. And therapy, a lot of people again, they don't really go to therapy. They're not really open to it. And it's very hard, sometimes to find a good therapist and stuff, but
Yeah, you
it's
gotta
great.
shop your therapist.
Yeah, yeah. And then just pampering yourself, sometimes you feel better when you look good.
No, that's true. That's a fact.
Like you just like, okay, well, I'm a little sad, but I look good. Like,
I look
it brings a little bit, it brings a little happiness,
like, at
and
least my nails are done. At least my lashes are cute, like,
yeah, right. At
those
least
are
I'm
the
not
things.
sad and ugly right now. Like this is good. This is great. Yeah, that's awesome. So the last question I have for you is what's one thing that you would tell your younger self in regards to mental health? What is a piece of advice that you would have given yourself or even just a youth at a younger age?
In regards to mental health,
Yeah.
avoidance is not an answer.
Yep.
Avoidance doesn't work. Avoidance oftentimes makes the situation worse because if you have a wound and you leave it unattended, it either gets infected, it just keeps getting bigger, it can spread. Same thing applies. I feel like we often look at mental health way different than physical health. But if you broke a bone, you wouldn't sit around with your broken bone for years. You wouldn't do that.
Right.
Immediately go and get it fixed. Same thing if you got a cut on your finger, you're cooking and you cut yourself real bad. You're immediately putting something on it, whether it's freaking Vaseline, Neosporin, a band aid. You're doing alcohol, you're doing something to attend to it. And so the same thing applies with mental health. Just because you can't see it physically, like you can't see the actual, wound, doesn't mean that you shouldn't attend to it as soon as possible because it will have consequences that can be seen and felt by others. You'll end up losing friendships, damaging friendships, hurting other relationships, hurting yourself, putting yourself in situations that you could have easily avoided had you just sought help. So, avoidance is not an answer
That's great.
at all.
That's great. Thank you so much. So before we go, do you want to just share what your handles are and then we could have that below and they could check you out?
Sure. My Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube are all Evangelia Green. My name is hard to spell, but it's
We'll have it below, guys.
oh, okay, okay, yeah. It's Evangelia Green for all my social media platforms.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. I was definitely blessed by that, and I know others will be as well. For those who are tuning in, thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next conversation. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for having me.